Two Badgers into the portal from the receiver room. I'm going to tell you why I think Will Pauling is going to be missed. We're going to talk about all of that, plus get Curtis's thoughts on Billy Edwards Jr. coming up next. Locked on Badgers.
You are Locked on Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. I'm your host, Ryan Herring. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, coming at you every single day. Really do appreciate you for tuning in. We got Curtis Holland over there, the playmaker. Always grateful when he can jump on. The dude knows ball, and we get smarter when he stops by for sure. Today's episode brought to you by, college football playoffs are almost here. If you don't want to miss a moment of the action, the college football playoffs are presented by Allstate. It begins with 4 first-round games December 20th, 21st on ESPN, ABC, TNT, and Max. I want to start here, Curtis, actually, because I realized there was a question in the Discord because I said, hey, Curtis is coming on. We're going to get questions. And one guy's like, who's Curtis? And I realized not everybody watches every show, and nor should they. God love you if you do. But really quickly, Curtis, for just kind of recap, your connection to Wisconsin, your family's connection to Wisconsin.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a lifelong Badger fan. So, my grandpa, he's originally from Racine, played football at Wisconsin, was on the 63 Rose Bowl teams in the Hall of Fame there, played for the Bears. Lou Holland, my father's name is Lou Holland Jr. He also played for Wisconsin in the 80s, played for McLean. It was actually on McLean's last team when McLean passed away. It was, after the season, his senior year. So, got ties there, grew up around the program, going to games, talking to coaches, talking to players. My uncle, he's the youngest, my dad's brothers and sisters. He played out under Bielema, actually, from 06 to 10. So, knew a lot of players from back then. Obviously, I went to school here from 2010 to 15. Played lacrosse, was the lacrosse president at the time. So, got a lot of experience to this school. I've been going to events with the athletic department, alumni my whole life. Got kind of a unique, kind of insight in that way. But, my mom's from Madison. My grandpa played baseball all those years back. So got a lot of Badger roots.
That's awesome, man. And by the way, go look up some of the, his grandfather, go look up some of the accolades. I put some of that in our Discord, man. The guy's a legend, an absolute legend. I want to start here. 2 receivers into the portal. We had a lot of questions. This was also kind of a question show. Will Pauling leave? CJ Williams leaves. A couple questions I want to throw up here to start with. This one's from Carl UW. What about the receiver room with Pauling going to the portal? This one's from Nick. Thoughts on the receivers to the portal and if our receiver room will be better overall or worse in 2025? I want to just kick it off really quick. I think Pauling's a loss. I think it's really easy to say everybody leaves, whatever. Pauling, I think, is the best route runner on this team the last couple of years. I think he has a different type of quickness. He's really tough. He'll go over the middle and he'll take shots and try to get back up. He doesn't always successfully do it. I know drops were an issue last year. I do think you're going to miss him. CJ for 2 years has been kind of injury prone, inconsistent, certainly promised there as a former 4-star recruit. I think it's okay. And I don't think with Tretchback and Kyron Johnson, Pauling is an insurmountable loss. I do think that's a loss that we're going to miss. What are your thoughts on kind of the receiver room and some of those questions there?
Yeah, I put this in the Discord earlier today. I know a lot of people are like, well, Pauling didn't play well this year, don't let the door hit you kind of thing. And I don't know if I feel that way. I think Pauling definitely had an off season and his production definitely dropped from a year ago, had some drop issues. Obviously, I think we all know that. But I think if you got the best version of Pauling or what Pauling was in 2023, that could be a great addition to the team moving forward. On top of that, I think Pauling's a good culture guy. I think he's one of the leaders of the team, or at least was one of the leaders of the team. And so it's tough to see him go. I think I wish him luck in his next endeavor. I do think he's going to land at a P4 spot. I think he's got that talent. Definitely an athlete, super quick. Maybe not the tallest, and maybe his deep speed isn't all the way there because of that. But I do think that that's definitely a loss for this team. I was hoping to see him, maybe in some more gadget plays next season. So that's tough. CJ, again, he's a staple on the outside. He's a good run blocker. That's one of the things that I definitely am going to miss from him. But kind of to your point, hasn't had a ton of production up until this point. So, when you look at kind of what they gave us last season, I do think their production can be replaced. I don't want it to sound bad when I say that, but when I look at what Pauling did and what CJ did just from a stats perspective last year, I definitely think you can replace that 1-to-1 with either a Tretch or a KBJ. And then if we go in the portal and get an outside receiver, or, maybe a Hilton steps up, maybe a Chris Brooks steps up, or Quincy Burrow steps up, I think you can replace that production too. So again, it's not a total loss, but I definitely feel like, it's something we're going to have to replace.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think Tretch can eat a lot of that up, and maybe Kyle Barry Johnson can eat a lot of that up. Tretch has got to get a little cleaner. Like there's a little bit of rounding off routes last year. There's a little bit of also drops. It's not just Pauling. There were a couple guys that struggled with drops last year. Tretch needs to hang onto the ball. Tretch is built a little differently. There's a comment down here from Tim. Great news. It's stretch time. I agree. It's stretch time, but now he's got to step up, man. Like he has got to really take the reins in that room and be one of those guys. And I think he can do it physically. He's there. But again, it's got to get cleaner, man. That's one thing Pauling's good at. It's the breaks, the getting open, the reading, the coverage. Like he's really good at finding those soft spots. Tretch has a little nuance in his game he needs to clean up.
Well, and that's the best way I think you can describe it. To me, Pauling was relatively crisp. He was clean. Tretch can be a little sloppy. And I think that, he plays a little looser, which, when he's in the open field, he's got a little bit more shiftiness to his game. He's a little quicker in that way, got a little bit more maybe high-end potential from just, creating exciting plays, explosive plays. But at the same time, he wasn't really as technical as Pauling was. And he had drop issues too. It's not like he was immune to some of the issues that Pauling was seeing. So he's definitely going to have to work on that. He's not a blocker. That's, he's, 5'10", 160. So he's not really a blocker. But I think that if he really commits this season to getting better, to improving his route running, to improving the top end of his routes and working on his hands, I think he can be a tremendous weapon for this team, but he's got to prove it.
Let me go back to that first question then. Do you think the 25 room is going to be better than the 24 room, or do you think it's going to be par? Do you think it's going to be worse? Well, let's say Vinny Anthony stays in the room. So you have another year of Vinny Anthony. You have Tretch. It was going to be more like he didn't come back because he didn't have a conversation with Coach Grimes and say, hey, I'm going to be featured more, right? Kyle Barry Johnson, maybe. Mark Hamper is a guy we're going to talk about a touch. Just that's an Idaho receiver that's going to be visiting Wisconsin 6'2". Do you think the receiving room is going to be about on par, or better, or worse?
So it's tough to really say. I don't think it'll be worse, but I think because of the nature of how we run the offense, I'm not going to say it's going to be a lot better in terms of just pure stats. I think Vinny's going to be better. I think he's going to have another year of practice, perfecting his, receiver skills, getting faster, stronger, all that stuff. So I think he'll be better. I do think Tretch will be better. Just by nature of coming back for another year. So you'll see a little bit more of him. And then I think we need to find a third guy, whether or not that's a Hilton, a Quincy Burrows, a Chris Brooks, who I think will be probably featured more in certain blocking schemes and things like that. I do think he'll have a little bit more of a carved out role. And then, if we get a guy like a Hamper, I think he could play on the outside too. And I think if you do that, you have a little bit more of a rotation. I think KBJ might take a jump. He's another guy, super quick, super shifty. I thought, when we watched his practice, he was actually pretty good at running his routes. He was pretty clean with it. He's got great hands. Obviously, you saw his high school highlights. So, I think it has the potential to be better. I think the receiver room as a whole underperformed last year. So, by being better, I think getting back to that just expected performance level, you'll see improvement.
Yeah, I think it actually will be a little better because last year's version of Pauling wasn't the version of Pauling he was in 2023. Right. So I think you can replace that with Tretch, and then another year of growth with a Pauling, a Burrows, a Brooks, maybe a Hilton. I do think it's going to be a tick better. It's still not going to be a great Big Ten receiving room, but I think it can be a solid Big Ten receiving room, if that makes sense.
Well, and keep in mind, there's one big piece of this that we're not considering that's going to take a big chunk out of those receiving yards, and that's the addition of Koziel. I think a 6'7" tight end over the middle. That's going to be whoever our quarterback is, probably Billy Edwards, obviously, but whoever the quarterback is next year. That's going to be their top target. I think 6'7" right in the middle. How can you not throw it to that guy? He had more receiving yards than the camp was sharing that day, more receiving yards by himself last year than our last 2-3 years of tight end production. That's crazy, right? So he's going to be a major feature of our offense, and I think that'll also allow our receivers to have a little bit more one-on-one matchups. Be able to kind of create more on their own and not necessarily be bracketed by safeties.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. JB down here, we all love JB, says Brooks is going to be a dog. St. Louis receivers are the best in the country.
Hey, JB, look, man, you've been waiting for this moment. I'm telling you, I think next year Brooks is going to have a lot more of a role. He's that physical guy, and Grimes loves those physical receivers, especially the ones that can block. So, I think he'll have a much bigger role next year.
Brooks also has oven mitts as hands, man. Like the group of practices.
Well, you can block with oven mitts, you know.
Well, he's got like those oven mitts with fingers. Like he can catch the ball. I mean, I actually meant that in a compliment. Although after I said it, I realized how it came off. All right, so I think we're on the same page, kind of with the receivers. I'm going to come back. We're going to get a break for the show, but I want to ask Curtis Holland. He was watching the Billy Edwards Jr. kind of thing go down. He saw a lot of Badger fans get frustrated and now kind of acceptance. I want to know where he's at with Billy Edwards Jr. and this offense. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick second for our friends of the show. We got a lot coming up today on Locked On Badgers, but first we got to talk about our great friends of the show over at FanDuel. And I wanted to ping you. I left you on here on purpose, Curtis. So I'm going to shotgun you on this. I asked Justin Rajiv this. What do you think the over-under will be on Wisconsin next year on FanDuel?
Yeah,
for the wins.
I mean, what you guys talked about last year. I mean, they're going to get all the Badger fans to probably bet the over on a 5.5, and then we'll see. Under might be interesting how that all plays out, but I think 5.5 you can't push it to 6 because they're just going to have everybody bet under. So I think it's going to be 5.5.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense, and I'm going to go over again for the third straight year. That's just what I can already feel it, man. I like Edwards. I do. If you want all that action, go over to FanDuel.com. New customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you get your first $5 bet correct. That's guaranteed $150 if you hit your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's episode also brought to you by our great friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the ultimate in daily fantasy. It's simple. It's easy. You don't have this long-term commitment where every week you got to shuffle guys. JB's watching the show. He knows about that college football fantasy shuffle because we got that league going on. PrizePicks is easier. You just make more or less a couple players. It's as simple as that. It's daily fantasy, real platform with injury insurance policy. So if you lose somebody, your lineups are still good. Even if one of your players gets hurt, sign up today, get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. It's easy. It's simple. It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of different options that you can play with. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. When you download the app, use code LOCKEDONCollege. PrizePicks, run your game. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, let's get into this conversation with Billy Edwards Jr. And I want to pick Curtis's brain on this. Where are you at on Billy Edwards Jr., your starting quarterback for the Wisconsin Badgers in 2025?
Yeah, so when he first signed, I think like everybody, we had thoughts of maybe a higher caliber quarterback in the portal, Mendoza. Mateer, I know that was a name that we brought up weeks ago, right? And people figured, he was going to be a guy that could come in, he could run, he could throw all those things. Well, once Arbuckle went to OU, that was basically dead. He's got a no contact tag in the portal right now. He's got his decision. So I don't know how much we were ever really in on that. But that said, when I first saw Billy Edwards, I was thinking probably C, Maryland quarterback. Maryland was not good this year, objectively. But the more I've looked into him, the more I've watched some of his film, the more I've actually listened to him talk, I've sort of raised that grade to more of a B. I kind of like the attitude he brings to this room. And you can watch his post-game pressers and things like that. He's professional, like any quarterback at a starting Power 4 school is going to be in 2024. But there was a couple of podcasts that he did where he was just kind of off the cuff and talking freely. And man, this dude, he's got an attitude that I don't know if we've ever really seen in the quarterback room. He talks about when he was backing up for Sam Hartman at Wake Forest and the things that Sam Hartman talks about. And then he talked about when he was backing up Talia at Maryland, right? And then when he had to go in when Talia went down and they were losing the game, and he kind of just stepped in and said, screw it. I'm 6'4". They're asking me to run the ball. If I fall forward, I'm going to get 3 yards. Next thing you know, he's running 20, gets hit. And now he's like, okay, I'm in the game. They go right down the field and score. The defense all jazzed up. They get the ball back, go down the field and score again. I mean, he's a gamer. He's a guy that comes in the game, says, whatever happens, happens. And no matter what, I believe that I'm going to make the play that we need to do in order to win. And obviously mixed results on that. He's not perfect. He's not the best quarterback in the world, but having that attitude, I think that never say die attitude, a little bit of that YOLO mentality, maybe, But I think there's a lot of, a lot to that. And the funny thing was on this podcast that he was talking about, he was sitting with one of his defensive ends. And this dude was talking about how when Billy came in, they believed in him. And when he moved the ball, that made them play better. How much would we have liked to see that this year? When your defense watches your quarterback play and says, this guy is a leader. We got to step our game up. I mean, that's huge, right? That right there makes a massive difference in our defensive season. So, I'm excited to see what he brings. I think he's got the right attitude. I think he's got some moxie to him. I think he's tough. He's a runner. He's an athlete. But most importantly, I think that the way we're going to play our offense is going to actually set him up for success more so than he was at Maryland.
I love this comment down here, Matthew Anderson. Edwards has that Baker Mayfield dog in him. One thing I've heard, like I've talked to some people kind of in the program around it, dog is a phrase that comes up a lot. A guy who, is tough, cares, he's emotional, he'll get people involved, he's invested. There's a great clip I saw. I was watching film as he was committing, watched some of his games. I think it was the Connecticut game. I think it was UConn. I'm trying to remember now. Where he took a bad shot. It should have been a penalty. Like it absolutely was a helmet to helmet. And he gets up. He doesn't do that thing where he's like moaning, looking for the play. He gets up, goes back to the line of scrimmage, and the very next play, they don't hand the ball off. He gets back and he slings it again. Like there is something to him that is a little.
It was funny too, because in this interview, he's talking about how one of his first loves was basketball, and then he was talking all kind of mad smack about balling. He was like, I'm gonna take the rock to the hole. Like football players got different kind of basketball toughness. Like dude's a hooper, and I'm like, man, that's crazy. So. And like I said, he's got that attitude. Like he thinks he's the best. And, again, you want to have a quarterback that thinks like that, because if your quarterback thinks every play I'm going to make it happen, like he's going to have a better attitude than if he comes in as scared or playing soft. Like you want a quarterback that has that dog mentality in him. And so, yeah, I was really excited. I was actually surprised. I wasn't expecting him to be like that at all. But man, listening to him for, a couple conversations, I'm excited for that attitude. And I think that's something that's desperately needed in that quarterback room.
Well, let me ask you this, and then I want to shift into because we got a bunch of questions submitted when I said I was going to have you on the show, a bunch of different things we're going to get into. But I want to finish with this one on Edwards, because he's not the perfect quarterback either. You said a B. I called it a double, which to me is like a B. It's not a home run. It's a program floor riser. I think it gives you stability in that room, but it's not a home run. A couple of my concerns. He can get a little turnover prone at times. I think he can put a couple balls up in harm's way. He's got a little reckless nature to him on some plays where you don't need to be reckless. Some plays you don't need to try to flip the ball to your halfback for like a 4-yard gain. To me, that's a worry. I think there's a bit of a worry. I don't think he has the greatest arm. I think it's a good arm, but it's a lot of shorter passes. It's a lot of kind of scheme fit.
Well, and a lot of people have been saying that's Maryland's offense is short passes. On top of that, he had no offensive line protection, so he kind of had to do that.
That's fair.
You're not going to be able to set up a deep route or a long developing play with Maryland's offense. You're getting toasted, right? I mean, Maryland's offensive line was terrible. You're not going to have time to do that, right? So for me, it's like, yeah, he has short routes because that's what he was asked to do. I think he's capable of doing more to do, and it's what he had to do. So I think he's capable of doing more than that. And I think that, again, with our offense probably being more emphasized toward the run, I think his legs in the run game. It was funny. So after I watched some Billy Edwards highlights, I went back and watched Jalen Daniels at Kansas under Grimes. And as I'm watching that game, there is nothing that Jalen Daniels did. And this was the game versus Colorado where they beat Colorado. There was nothing that Jalen Daniels did that Edwards couldn't do, right? He's probably about the same speed. I think he's bigger than Jalen Daniels. His arm is probably a little better, right? And so, again, watching kind of how off platform Jalen Daniels making plays. I mean, you saw that from Edwards too, because he had no choice. He had to make off platform plays. So that's the thing that got me excited. Then I started seeing some option looks and some triple and some innovative plays that we haven't seen for the last few years. And I got kind of excited. So I got to kind of pump my brakes on that. My last quarterback take, I know people take issue with. I don't necessarily change my opinion as to what I had said in the past, but I think now, looking at some of our previous quarterback play, there was definitely some physical limitations, and I don't think we're going to have that anymore moving forward.
Yeah, Coach Max says, and Coach Max is a great dude. I was able to meet him in person. He's a phenomenal human. Says, look at the sickos on a live stream at almost midnight because 2 players hit the portal. That's right. That's his community. What is your biggest fly in the ointment with Edwards? Because I don't want to paint this over as a perfect fit where it feels like we're over glossing it.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think he's as, refined of a quarterback. I mean, going back to when he was trying to fight for the job last year, which he won over the transfer, mind you. I mean, he was in a battle in the spring last year that he won the starting job. But the biggest thing for him was just his overall ability at throwing the ball. His accuracy, his arm strength. Those are the same questions that we have. I think that's a fair thing to say. He was number 3 in the Big Ten in throwing, so he can definitely sling the rock. But I do think that he's not as accurate at times. Honestly, I thought that with the exception of getting balls bad at the line, Locke did have probably about the same accuracy as he does. So that's obviously probably my biggest concern. I don't know if he's got the strongest arm in the world. However, one of his highlight throws, he did drop like a 60-yard bomb versus Auburn in the bowl game last year. That was wild. I don't know if it was Auburn. It might have been UConn. It was one of the films that I watched. They all kind of blur together. But so he can chuck it, but it's more of a prayer than on a rope, So that's kind of where I would say I'd have my concerns. But the big thing with him, the big scout with him pre last year was he's a runner. He's a mobile quarterback. He's the guy that bring in a run RPO at Maryland to sort of changed up the look from Talia. So that's kind of the thing I'm probably the most excited about with him.
Yeah, and Coach Mack also says, I'm worried about Edwards' arm strength. The kid can move. He'll be protected, can see over the line, but can he get the ball there? I think intermediate, the throws, actually, he gets a lot of zip on it. I do think the longer throws, they flutter.
I just don't think he's as accurate in as long as deep throws.
Yeah, I think that's a fair one. All right, we're going to take a pause there. We get a bunch of your questions submitted. We're going to get into that next segment, including I was kind of the mind that they might need to turn over to the young player in 2026 at quarterback. Let's get away from the one-year rental portal guys. Maybe not. Now that somebody else pointed something out to me, I'm a little on the fence with that. I want to get Curtis's take on it, plus you in the chat coming up next. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel is honestly, outside of my wife, like my longest partner at this point. I guess my kids. But FanDuel's been with this show since like as long as I can remember, because they're fast, they're easy, they're simple to use. They are the perfect partners we've talked about over at FanDuel.com. Again, we already talked about them. New customers, $5 bet gets you $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Go check that out over at FanDuel. Today's episode also brought to you by our new friends of the show. Just talking about them because it is apropos for this time of the year. Over at TNT, the college football playoffs are back, and with a newly expanded 12-team format, it's almost guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoffs begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoffs presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Let's get back into this. Let's answer some of these questions. And also just say thank you for everybody being here. Thank you to Curtis for jumping on, as always. Curtis, a couple of comments we got when I said, hey, we're going to have you on, are just literally like, love Curtis. That's from Mark Benson. I had someone else saying, I appreciate all the work you do. Again, to you, all the research you do. I want to throw this question up to you because I thought this was a really good one from Smo. We've been talking a lot about, let's get out of this one-year rental quarterback thing. Like, this is going to be the last year. And then next year, Carter Smith can take over. You still need depth. Like, you still are going to bring in a couple high school kids, bring in a depth guy in the portal. But Smo asks, if 26 is an easier schedule, the year we're building towards, might it make sense to get an experienced starter that year to kind of maybe get the program to 9-10 wins with that schedule? I think it's a great question.
Yeah. And my answer is going to be about as milquetoast as it gets. It depends. I mean, I think that, like I said, I like what Billy Edwards gives us this year in terms of leadership in the quarterback room and experience. I wish he had an extra year. I think the way that they managed his reps at Maryland was borderline criminal. But what I would say is it really is going to depend on kind of how the depth chart looks, following the spring, following the summer, right? Right now you're looking at, you have Billy Edwards, who's a senior, and then you have Mabry, obviously redshirt freshman. You have what is going to be a true sophomore in O'Neal, and then you have a true freshman in Carter Smith. It'll be interesting to see who wins the second team job. If Carter Smith wins it, which I think he's very capable of doing, and I think he really is probably the best fit for what we want to do on offense moving forward, then I think maybe you roll with him because he's got a lot of upside and he's shown he can come in and immediately make an impact, right? And so I don't think you really need to roll in the next year with a transfer. If Mabry wins it, the second team spot, same kind of thing. I think he's got a lot of potential. Same kind of thing with O'Neal. But here's the problem. Once that happens, we're going to lose more quarterbacks. It's going to happen. We'll probably lose Milos. We'll probably lose between O'Neal and Mabry. Whoever is not higher on the depth chart will lose the other one. If Carter Smith passes both of them, there's a chance we lose both. I know we paid O'Neal some money to come here, but the reality is he's not going to play. He's not going to play. So, I do think that we lose one, maybe even two guys next year after the season. And so we're going to have to bring in portal guys regardless of what happens. We're also going to have to make sure we lock up a 26 guy. Jaron Mock.
Probably maybe two.
Yeah, and that's tough, but I don't, Jaron Mock, I don't know where he's going to be at kind of going into the next year. I mean, obviously Longo's gone. All the quarterbacks that were in the room when Longo came in are also all gone. So it's tough to really say if he's going to still be our guy. We're probably going to have to recruit another 26 quarterback. So that's what I'm looking at. I mean, I'm thinking 2, maybe even 3 people getting brought into that room next year.
Yeah, I like how you put that. To me, there's a phrase in the Navy called target of opportunity. It's a military phrase in general, but target of opportunity. It might just come down to if you can find that, because that 26 year, not to look past the 25 year, which is incredibly important for this program, for Luke Fickell, for this team, but that 26 year represents a big opportunity. It's the maturation of that 24 class, that 25 class. It's an easier schedule. It is a big opportunity to take a jump in the biggest metric that anybody cares about, which is wins and losses. If you have the opportunity to bring in an experienced quarterback to guide you through that schedule, you might just need to do it because of that.
Well, and that's the thing too. It depends on who's in the portal, right? I mean, like at the end of the day, if we can get a quarterback that can raise our game, that fits what we're trying to do, then yeah, maybe take a look at him. But I do think that we're going to give the younger guys maybe more shake this year than we have in years past, just because I think, you got Mabry in the system another year. You got a Carter Smith who's a real high upside guy. You got an O'Neal who's already played. So I think you're going to give them a little bit more shake than maybe we've done in the last 2 years. And, like I said, I do think Mabry's got the talent to run this offense. I think Carter Smith's got the talent to run this offense. O'Neal I haven't watched as much of, but him having experience is never a bad thing, especially when we need arms in the room. So we'll see how that all plays out. Again, I don't really have a great answer for you right now just because I don't know what's going to happen.
Let's hit this next one. And I apologize. We're not going to be able to get to all the questions here, but let's see if we can bang through a couple of these a little quicker. The next one here, let me bring it up, is how do you feel about, this is from Brian Shetty in the Discord. How do you feel about the staff's usage of the portal this year? Different than last year? Does it feel like players are maybe being encouraged to transfer that are not in the new staff's plan?
Yeah, I could give a really long-winded answer to this question. My thought is, yeah, I do think they are using it different. And here's how. Following, kind of the offseason last year, sort of in the spring last year, you see Max get elevated to the GM, and we hire an analyst whose job is essentially like an NFL free agent, analyst, essentially to look at all the teams, look at all the potential portal guys. I think what this did was increase our ability to be efficient in the portal. So when, we already knew kind of the guys we wanted to target right when they entered the portal. There's a lot of different reasons as to why that could be, but at least in this instance, we were able to target our guys quickly. We were able to get them on campus almost immediately, and we were able to get them to sign basically right when they got on campus. That's efficiency. There's a really high chance that Edwards was not our first quarterback candidate. And if that's the case, we are able to pivot immediately and land in Edwards, right? Michigan wakes up one morning, they're looking at $2.5 million to Edwards. The next day they wake up, he's at Wisconsin, right?
Yeah.
So that's the speed and efficiency this staff, at least the football staff behind just the coaches, is moving at. That's a well-run organization. I know a lot of people have all their issues they want to have, the athletic department and the coaches and all these things. But when you're able to execute at that level, at that high of an efficiency level in the portal, that's amazing. I think the biggest issue last year is we didn't really bring in many D linemen. This year, we already have 3, arguably 4, how you want to judge Rieger. And then I don't know if we're all the way done yet. So I think that
we're looking for one more still.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So if you told me 2 weeks ago we were going to get 5 D linemen, I'd have been like, dude, you're out of your mind. Especially when they're all bigger and they all have, they all have played and they all have stats. Like,
well, let me really quick tell you the difference even more. Like, because you're on a great road here, and I'm just going to add another part of this road. All the guys that got this were Plan A guys on the D line as well. Last year, Lane and Hills worked out great. If any of these guys works out like Hills, phenomenal. But those weren't Plan A guys. Those are like 4th, 5th options. So yeah, they identified, to your point, and then they landed 4 Plan A guys on that front 7 almost immediately. Now they got to get a couple corners still, but
and here's kind of where I'm at too with it. I know last night you guys were talking about, should we have gotten a better quarterback? Should we have gotten a guy that could raise our ceiling? Here's the deal: our issues are way deeper than quarterback. I've been saying that all year. Locke was not great, but he was not the main problem of that defense. We couldn't stop the run to save our lives. That was the biggest problem of our team last year. If you look at it, we're 5-0 against the teams we outrushed. We were 0-7 against the teams we did not ourush. Right? Yep. We had our rushing defense probably since the last time we didn't make it to a bowl. That needs to be fixed, period. If we can save some money by getting a quarterback who's maybe not the highest end guy, because we're not a team capable of making it to that highest level, even with a high end quarterback, and spend some money on shoring up the D line, fixing the run defense, I think you do that. I think you kind of have to play it that way. I don't think that we can go and spend $2 million on a quarterback. Instead of what we could do is spend $500,000 on 4 D linemen. I think that's a better investment for this team right now.
My Lord Lester says Max is 2024 Theo Epstein. Maximus Steinecker, Pat Lambert, those guys are incredible. Like they are superstars. Yeah, Max is awesome. They're both really good at what they do. Let me hit another question in here. Again, we'll get it through as much as we can. This one here, this one is a good one, I think. How do you ever get 5 quarterbacks in the room if you have to make promises, or not even promises? How do you keep the quarterbacks in the room if it's so easy to transfer and quarterbacks are always leaving? What's the answer there, and what is the amount of bodies you want there?
So this is a tough question. There's been a lot of talk about promises being kept, not being kept. I'm of the understanding, at least until I hear from actual concrete evidence, be it the players themselves directly, not in a media article designed to sound a certain way, or from the coaches, which they will never divulge unless 10 years from now you get in the bar and you're talking about what it is. I don't think we're making promises like that. I think we're promising opportunity. And when you're managing a team of 18, 19, 20, 22-year-olds, right, you can take that 20 different ways. I've been on a lot of teams. I've managed college players before. I've managed a staff of college employees. I've managed a professional setting just after college kids. You can say, hey, you're promised an opportunity here. And they can take that 1,000 different ways. They can say, well, you promised me all this. It's like, no, I promised you that you had the potential to do all this, right? I didn't promise you anything. I'm not giving you anything. So that's what I think is probably more likely what's happening. But here's kind of the thing with the quarterbacks. I think that the most important thing to keep someone invested is they have to see how they contribute to the success of the organization. Money obviously helps, but money is not the only thing. I know a lot of people think it is. It's not. I think if a quarterback sees where he fits into what they want to do down the road, and that's clearly defined to him, again, not a promise, just like, hey, right now we're looking at, we have Billy Edwards. And then if everything works out, this is what we're looking like down the road. There's a chance for you to win a starting role next year. There's a chance that, you got to take a couple of years to get better. But if you get better, that'll make the rest of the team better. And then in a couple of years, you have another shot at starting role. Like, it's things like that. It's making them understand where they fit in the system and getting them to believe that they matter to that system, because every quarterback on the roster matters. You need third string guys. You need scouting report guys or scout team guys. The scout team, listen to Kirby Smart. Scout team was the reason, in his mind, they won a national championship. So you need guys like that. They're vitally important to the team. And so understanding how your role fits into the team as a whole can help you retain guys. But that said, we don't have a track record of bringing guys through our system. I mean, you lose your offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, and now we have a completely flipped over quarterback room. There's just not that track record that exists right now. And you throw on top of that all the NIL, all the money, all the everything that's going on in the background, it's tough to maintain that cohesion.
Yeah, and I think part of it too, as I'm putting up some really good comments, we have a ton of great comments, specifically about Carter Smith and how soon he'll be able to play or not. I want to throw in there too, I think fans are still struggling to some degree with the portal and how it's changed recruiting. Like, fans are very frustrated that Mabry Mentor, you might be bringing in somebody that might mess with him and he might leave. You just look at the world of college football. We talked about USC before the show. You and I did over text. USC's imploding. USC's losing everybody. Like, they lost Miller Moss. They lost the branches. They lost their running back. They're losing pieces everywhere. Like, this is just going to happen. You have to just keep reloading the gun, and you're going to be losing bullets continuously. That's this until it changes, until you get contracts, until something drastic happens. This is what's going to happen, and fans just kind of have to get used to it. I don't know how else to say.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing that's, I think everybody's kind of dealing with right now. I mean, all the teams are going through the same problems we are. We're not like Badger fans, and I've said this before, I feel like Wisconsin fans tend to be more insular. They focus on the Badgers, they focus on the Packers, they focus on the Brewers, they focus on the Bucks, right? They tend to be a little bit more insular. But when you look across the landscape of college football, everybody's dealing with the same shit. Like, we're all dealing with this new problem that's causing all kind of issues. Promises being kept, not being kept, who the hell knows? Money getting spent left and right, people asking for, contracts for, whatever. This is just happening everywhere. I do think that the thing that the staff is doing really well is we are recruiting a lot of people, recruiting at a high clip, and the efficiency at which we've worked the portal so far this offseason has been at a high level. We need to bring in a lot of guys every single year. That's just the reality of it. And I think the guys that stick, the guys that fight out for their role, are going to be the guys you build the team on moving forward. But it's going to take some time to get the young guys up through the program, right? And so you have to hold on to them, but you can't just punt on next year or the year after that if your team is all freshmen or sophomores. You got to plan to win. Otherwise, coaches aren't going to be around much longer. And that's going to be the case no matter who the hell our coach is. If we had Paul Chryst, it'd be the same problem. If we had Jim Leonard, it'd be the same problem. If we hired Lance Leipold, it'd be the same problem. That's going to be the issue that teams have to deal with. And like I said, credit to the staff. I think from a team management perspective, they're doing a really good job. And, from the guys that we have lost in the portal this year, it's tough. You want to see a Braden Moore. You want to see an Amari Snowden. You want to see what those guys could have been. But ultimately, in terms of what we've lost from production, outside of really Pauling, we haven't lost a game-breaking amount. It's not like we lost Zachariah Branch or our two backup running backs, or we're down to one quarterback on scholarship. I mean, there are multiple Power 4 teams that only have one scholarship quarterback right now. Ohio State has, I think, maybe 3? And
they'll
lose another one. So they're down to 2. Did they this year? I mean, they have Will Howard. I don't feel, full disclosure, I'm not confident Ohio State's going to win on Saturday. So, did they actually figure it out? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? So, so that's kind of where I'm at with it. Like, again, teams are dealing with these problems. And I think that, until, like you said, guidelines get put in place, some laws get passed, things change, everybody's going to kind of be dealing with this.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with it. And it doesn't make it easier. Like you still, like you said, it's not that these players leave and you say, it's not that they're bad players and you don't want them to stay, but it's just the reality of where we're at. And I would say, if you're going to look at the players that leave, also look at the players that stay. Dylan Jones very easily could have gone this year. Tretch went and came back. Haywood easily could have gone.
Tretch round 2. He ran it back.
Right. And Tretch is, but like Tretch left in the recruiting period in high school too and came back. Like Tretch is a whole saga here with Wisconsin. But my point is, the Badgers haven't lost a ton of the players that would break your heart, if that makes sense, if that's a way to say it.
No, and I think the core of the future of this team is still there. I wanted to highlight a comment that Mitch made,
please,
that I think is something that I've been thinking a lot.
Right here?
And he says, I think Fick is more capable of making change than Chris would have been. This has kind of been my point, right? Fick made mistakes. He got here and he made mistakes. Air raid, mistake, right? 3, whatever the hell defense we've been running the last 2 years, mistake, okay? The difference between him and Chris is Chris' offense was not innovating. And so what did he do? He ran it back. And then he ran it back again. And then he got his ass fired, okay? Fickell realized, hey, you know what? This area is not going to work at Wisconsin. What do we have? Well, we have big, strong offensive linemen. We got good running backs. We can run the rock. We need to shift to a more pro-style, run-heavy offense. And then he goes and does it. He said in the press conference last year, or right after this season, he's like, yeah, our defense, we didn't have size, and we got ran over. We got to fix that. And so what do? They go and sign for D linemen almost immediately, right? These are the things that you need to do. You need a staff that's willing to see, okay, yeah, we made mistakes. And then they go and then they fix them. They change. They adapt. They grow. They get better. That's what Fickell's done. That's what he did every year he was at Cincinnati. And that's what he's done since he's been here. He realized what we're doing isn't working. So they go and they fix it. And I don't know if we've gotten that from previous coaches in the past.
Yeah, as well said. We're going to wrap it there. A bunch of comments. Will Hanna says NIL sucks. My comment to that would be, I don't know if it would suck if we had more of it. Like, I don't think Oregon fans think NIL sucks. In general, I don't love it. I get it. Bunch of comments as well. Thank you guys, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Curtis, as always, for joining us, my friend. When you're done, go check out Locked On College and Locked On Big Ten, all the biggest stories in our conference and across college football on those 2 channels on Wisconsin. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, appreciate the heck out of you guys. If you're not in the Discord, come join us in the Discord. I'll put that link in the description or in the show notes. So come join us in the Discord where we can talk Badgers and all other things on Wisconsin, and we will talk later.